Today I'm taking over the cheapest franchise in MLB history, but I have to play to their rules and find out if Moneyball can actually build a champion. Since Oakland's stingy ownership holds the team to the lowest possible payroll, the Athletics have become well known for trading all of their star players, but against all odds, they've somehow made the playoffs 11 times this century. We're gonna play Moneyball, but in order to determine if it actually works, this video requires a very strict set of rules that will bring me down to Oakland's level. Our player salaries can never exceed $65 million. We can't sign any free agents above 84 overall. We can't give out any contracts longer than 2 years. And of course, any trades that I make have to be realistic. I'm trying to take away any chance to cheese this rebuild, and I'm very curious to see if Oakland has any Moneyball magic left in them because they have not made the playoffs since 2020. It's opening day against the Guardians, and JP Sears is trying to get out of this inning as he's the best starting pitching option for a team that definitely does not have an ace. There's already a runner in scoring position in inning number 1, but there's a strikeout, so we're getting our first look at this Oakland offense, which leaves a lot to be desired. But our best player is no doubt 85 overall right fielder Brent Rooker, who is one of the best hitters in all of baseball. He will very likely be one of the players we have to trade at some point in this rebuild, but for now, he's going to be scored by another promising player, Shea Langeliers, who launches this into right center field for our first run of the season. I did not expect Oakland to strike first here on opening day, but obviously there's a lot of ball left to play, and we can't expect Sears to hang on forever, but he gets out of another inning. Getting further along in this game and getting deeper into our lineup is definitely going to show our weaknesses, because after Rooker and Langeliers, there's a bunch of C potential question marks, but the Guardians bail us out with an error. That gets 2 aboard for Esteuri Ruiz, and I'm going to struggle with that name this entire video, but regardless, he's a very dynamic player with 97 clutch, who I'm very excited to see develop, even though he struck out, and now Brent Rooker flies out to end the inning. That was a huge missed opportunity to extend our lead, and now of course the Guardians are gonna get going, as JP Sears has 2 more runners on base, but once again he gets out of it. I wanted to play this game specifically to see what we have for the future, but I never expected to win it as Zach Geloff goes deep to left field where it is caught. Along with a guy like Ruiz, he is also a B potential prospect, so since he has a bunch of team control, he's a guy that if he performs well could be on this team for a majority of this rebuild as Cleveland finally tied the game. Now we're relying on our bullpen, and this is not a good start. David Fry launches this into left field, going all the way back to the wall where it bounces off for an RBI double. So the A's are trailing for the first time today, and a big reason for that is their offense only has 3 hits. However, I must have spoke too soon because Diaz singled, followed by Miguel Andujar. So now there are 2 aboard, and this is the weirdest play I've ever seen, going off the third base bag into the air, and that's going to buy time to score the tying run. Weirdly, that type of play is exactly the type of luck Oakland needed to get back into this game, because this current roster is not going to find themselves in a lot of close games against quality teams like the Guardians as Brent Rooker flies out just before the wall. What a way to start the rebuild, as we've taken this one all the way to extra innings, and we're going to have a chance to walk it off in the 10th. Win or lose, this is a great showcase of our strengths and weaknesses, as opening days allowed several young players to flash, and what a catch in right field. That one literally just saved the game because our runner at second was ready to gun it, and this has become a defensive clinic. 2 great defensive plays have made this game a lot more interesting, but it's not going to matter unfortunately because the Guardians just scored the go-ahead run, so the Oakland A's lose on opening day. That was a heartbreaker, but we can't be too disappointed because it took one of the best teams in baseball 12 innings to get the best of us, which honestly just shows how much heart this team has. Maybe I spoke too soon though, because we did get swept, so it seems our blip of being mediocre only lasted 1 game, as we're battling to earn our first win in a tie game against the Boston Red Sox, and Max Schumann just beat out a throw to first with 0 outs, and Ruiz lays down a bunt that he's actually gonna beat to first base. A huge part of Moneyball is famously to get on base, and we did a great job of that, so we're in a great situation with Brent Rooker up and the bases loaded, as this sacrifice fly to right field is gonna be enough to walk it off for win number 1. That is a great way to go into our first scouting session of the season, and because Oakland heavily focuses on developing its homegrown talent, the draft is very important, and this year they have the number 4 overall pick, but I'm not seeing any generational players. So in these first couple weeks, we're going to take a look at some safe position player prospects, starting with outfielder Sidney Burris. He could be a target if he falls to number 4, as Lawrence Butler's struggling this year, and it's only a matter of time before I consider a Brent Rooker trade as he enters arbitration starting next year. Oakland's year is off to a very bad start, start, but getting a win against the defending champs could turn that around, but Texas just took the lead in a tie game. That means Oakland needs an answer in the 9th inning, and Shea Langeliers goes the other way for a big double, so we have 2 outs to score him and stay in this game, but that is a very weak pop-up, which means this is our last chance, and that should have stayed fair. Unfortunately, we got swept by the Rangers, so the Athletics are off to a 1-12 start. We need to build some confidence, but it's very hard to do that when we're getting shut out by the Nationals, as Langeliers just missed a chance to get some runs on the board, but here's Miguel Andujar going deep to left center field. He's a great example of a Moneyball player because he was very undervalued and got waived by the Pirates, so Oakland made the move to pick him up, and so far in this dynasty, he has a really good on-base percentage. If we want to succeed in this rebuild, we need to squeeze every ounce of talent out of guys like Miguel Andujar, because even though our farm system is the #1 priority, most of these guys are going to take a while to be ready. However, we can speed up our development process by targeting college players, which is actually a Moneyball strategy described in the book, and this might be the key of the rebuild if we want to contend before guys like Brent Rooker have to get traded, as he has loaded bases in a tie game against Washington, and even though this is caught, it does score the go-ahead run. Oakland is very close to avoiding another sweep, but even more importantly, winning the 2nd game of their season, as another run could seal it here, but they're unable to score McCann. But after 2 weeks on the bench, I can finally introduce you to Oakland's secret weapon. A closer is completely useless if you're not in the position to win games, and unfortunately for Mason Miller, he just so happens to be one of the best in all of baseball, but he had to wait a long time to get his season debut. I really can't blame him for walking a batter since he sat on the bench for so long, but this nice play at short earns him his first save, and Oakland finally won their 2nd game. There's really no chance of making the playoffs, so this season's about developing our young talent as much as possible, and also we have to nail this first MLB draft, but as you can see, all the position players at the top of the draft really are not that great. There are very few teams who have fallen off faster than the Marlins, as we just tied this game in the 9th, so this is the best chance we've had to win our first series of the season, as Brent Rooker got runners at the corners, as the winning run advances to 3rd for Shea Langeliers, who comes in clutch to secure a signature walk-off victory. We barely won that game, even though our offense had 13 total hits, which is definitely a very rare performance because we're last in the league in pretty much every offensive category. Oakland just needs one more victory to secure their first series win of the season, and just like last game, they're going to tie it up late in this one, so we're heading back to extra innings where the Marlins have 2 runners in scoring position, and even though this is not going to drop, the runner is definitely going to try to take off for home. Here he comes down the 3rd baseline, the throw comes in just a bit offline, he's safe. Unfortunately, we could not hold them, and now Brent Rooker just had the most delayed reaction in the field, which allows another run to score, so Oakland could be in trouble, but Seth Brown on the first pitch he saw is going to drive in a run. Now we're pinch hitting Kyle McCann, who's played well in limited opportunities, but that's an immediate double play, so this 3-game series is tied at 1 apiece. It all comes down to game 3, but as you can see, we're down 1 run in the 9th inning as Nick Allen hits a chopper that doesn't go very far, but he's going to beat out the throw, so at least that's a good start to the inning, and now Ruiz gets aboard. We cannot hit into a double play under any circumstances, but of course that's exactly what we do. So it all comes down to Brent Rooker, who has 2 outs and the tying run at 3rd, but that sinker just got blown right by him as Oakland loses another series. That is brutal because now we have a tough stretch of games against our stacked division, so we're going to start the season 15-45. I'm looking for reasons to be optimistic about the future, as Brent Rooker, Miguel Andujar, and Ruiz are playing pretty well, and at least our other young players are getting the chance to develop, but as you can see, our pitching rotation is a complete mess, and aside from Mason Miller and his 14 innings, this bullpen is a nightmare. To no one's surprise, we are not good this season, but I did not expect such few bright spots on a team with so much young talent, as we're taking on the Angels, who are in 4th place in our division, but we just gave up the lead. Winning a series against our in-state rival could be a huge confidence boost, but forget about it because that baseball was just crushed, so I'm counting down the days until the MLB draft, although this game might not be over yet because the bases are loaded. I am just as surprised as you are, as there's 1 out, but now this is the worst possible time to hit into a double play, so our comeback falls up short. That was an embarrassing start to the season, but maybe we can turn things around in the MLB draft, where the #1 player on my board is easily Omar Valenzuela. He already hits lefties very well and has the upside to improve against righties, but if we're unable to land him, then I think my next best 2 options are Estevan Nunez and Ricky Rayburn. If you've watched this channel for a while, you know I usually wait to draft pitchers until much later in the draft, because as you can see, the game really likes to auto-generate a lot of really good ones. It is really important we nail this nervous, so I spent some time to get my draft queue looking the way that I want it, but right off the bat, one of my top 3 guys is off the board. Now I'm incredibly nervous because I did not prepare for what happens if all 3 of them go in front of me, and even though Colorado took one of the players I like, it was not Omar Valenzuela, who is going to become the first draft pick of this rebuild. My plan for the second round is definitely not as established, so more than likely I'm just going to go with the best player available on my board, and of course that's kind of limited because I really did not scout enough position players. Thankfully though, Pedro Hernandez is available at pick 39, and with his great contact skills, I think he could play pretty early, so this is a no-brainer in round 2. Our next selection is the same story, although I'm gonna have to decide between 2 third basemen, as Ryan Roper is a much better hitter than Zach Goodman, but with that defense, there's no chance he stays at third base, so since we already took Omar Valenzuela, I think Goodman is the right selection here. Hopefully I made the right decision, as my next favorite player went right in front of us, so even though Roper's still available, we started this draft with 3 infielders, so I'm taking the best starting pitcher on my board. He did get taken, so in round 4, we're going back to position player, and even though I like Eduardo Mendez as a developmental guy, he's a bit too old, we're running out of time, I'm going D'Angelo Padgett. I know he's not the highest potential player, but contact is a great skill to invest in, and here in round 5, I just realized I completely forgot to put Brian Cho on my board, and honestly, I thought he was taken a long time ago, but just as you see so often with Discovery pitchers, he's still here, and I'm taking him. In round 6, we have a much easier decision, with Brian Roman being the only player left on our board, and as you know, walks per 9 is probably the most important simulation stat for pitchers, so I will happily take this selection and end our draft. I am very excited to see those ratings, and I hope that we made an impact, because Mason Miller is our only all-star, and with an ERA and a whip under 1, that definitely makes sense. This is already a pretty decent farm system with guys like Darryl Ernaiz, Tommy White, and Jacob Wilson, along with Nick Kurtz, who I honestly completely forgot about, so with Omar Valenzuela coming in, we have an embarrassment of riches at that spot. Then on top of that, Ryan Noda has B potential and is having a decent year at first, while Seth Brown may be listed as a left fielder, but he did play first base in the past. Of all positions, I've apparently decided to stock up at first base, and here's the American League's leading base stealer, Esteuri Ruiz. This is a rematch against Los Angeles, coming out of the break as we score Ruiz from second base, which does tie the game, but there's still plenty of time left in the 8th inning, as there are runners at the corners for Seth Brown, but unfortunately, the 101-mile-an-hour fastball forces the fly out. Looking at the stats alone, there's a great reason why I don't trust our bullpen, and starting with a runner on base is definitely not very inspiring, as this is obliterated over the head of Ryan Noda, and the pinch runner Joe Adell has 97 speed. He is not stopping, the throw comes in, and he is out. He got greedy, so now the game is still tied in the bottom of the 9th, where we already have Schumann on first, but now Nick Allen's gonna lay down a bunt to try to advance him to second, but he's actually able to beat out the throw. It's a bit sad that bunting is one of the most reliable ways we can get on base, but now with 2 runners aboard, Abraham Toro slaps this into the outfield, and that is gonna end the game. Oakland has walked it off against their division rival, as we started the second half with a series win. Our young talent is looking better every game, which is contributing to one of the best stretches we've had, as we just walked it off against the Houston Astros. To my surprise, we actually won that series, so maybe we can actually pass the White Sox to not be the worst team in baseball. The trade deadline is known for being a fun, chaotic time for the entire league, unless you're the Oakland Athletics, because this team is not going to be ready to buy for a very long time, and while it would be smart to hear some offers for Mason Miller and Brent Rooker, they still have a lot more team control, so we don't have to be in a rush to get that done. Just out of curiosity though, if we were to hear offers from Mason Miller, there's no doubt we deserve to get an A potential prospect in pretty much any deal we draw up, and that even includes the #1 pick this year, Travis Bazana. Miller is definitely getting traded at some point in this video, but when he does, I'm going to make sure the team he goes to and the return is as realistic as possible, because there's no way the Orioles should be giving up someone like Jackson Holiday, for instance. Now that the trade deadline is passed, it is finally time to view our draft picks, which is by far the most important thing we've done this entire video. Let's go into the screen, and I see at the very top, Omar Valenzuela has 97 potential. Always trust your scouts, because they do not lie. They said he was the #1 prospect on our board, and they certainly were not kidding. He comes in MLB ready with the ability to mash lefties, and he is the highest overall and potential player in our entire class. Then in round 2, we selected Pedro Hernandez, and honestly, I'm a bit disappointed by these ratings, because he's only coming in with 84 potential, and some part of me was hoping that would be closer to 90. Don't get me wrong though, his great contact makes him serviceable, but since he has no secondary position, along with terrible power and fielding ratings. Contact skills were the top thing I was looking for, and at least Zach Goodman's look a little bit better, as he has 85 potential, but as you can see, his fielding is significantly better. Aside from Valenzuela, my favorite position player in this entire class, though, might be D'Angelo Padgett, who follows the theme of having all contact and no power, but that plate discipline shows he can get on base, and on top of that, he has the best fielding out of anybody. We also got two young starting pitchers with high potential, but maybe the guy I'm most excited about only has 79 potential, but he's already coming in at 71 overall with a 76 walks per 9. Overall, we did a great job of drafting players in what was a pretty thin draft class, but all I can say is our first baseman better watch their back because Omar Valenzuela is coming. Our hot streak is definitely worn off, so honestly, there is not much else to do this season, but the last thing I want to do before the end of the year is decide who the worst team in baseball is. The real-life 2024 Chicago White Sox have been historically bad, so this toilet bowl matchup is the perfect way for us to conclude the first year of the rebuild, as we're looking for another extra inning walk-off, and Abe Toro just needs to hit this far enough to secure a sacrifice fly, which he does, as the Oakland Athletics are officially the better of two very bad teams. We're ending this season on the highest note we possibly can, finishing only 41 games back of the Mariners at 54-108. Overall, there were a few encouraging developments this season, as obviously a guy like Brent Rooker did his thing, but seeing guys like Seth Brown, Ryan Noda, and JJ Bleday all ball out at times was pretty cool, as Bleday was third on the team in RBIs, and right behind him was Ruiz, who had probably the most interesting season out of everybody. He did not get on base a ton or hit for any power, but even despite this, he led the entire MLB in stolen bases. I know we just drafted a first baseman, but even then, I want to find a way to hang on to Ryan Noda, because he has 99 plate discipline, which is perfect for Moneyball. On the pitching side of things, Ken Waldichuk came up for a bit and played pretty well, but as you could probably guess, the rest of our rotation after that was a complete dumpster fire. There's no point in bringing back any of these free agents, especially because we need room on our roster for my first round of Moneyball free agents. I'm mostly targeting guys with C potential who are coming off of bad years with their previous teams, and my favorite player of the bunch may be Luke Raley, who the Mariners let walk one season after trading for him. Then there's also Reese McGuire, who should be a pretty serviceable backup catcher as long as he doesn't spend too much time in his car. MJ Melendez is the highest potential player I'm going after, and he's ultimately a reclamation project because the Royals did not offer him arbitration. Then we took a starting pitcher in the Rule 5 draft, and I was planning to make another selection, but the Rockies took a reliever with a great name who I really wanted on the team. Even though we lost out on Woo Suk Go, I still feel like this offseason was very positive for the Athletics, and they should be well set up to win more than 54 games, as this lineup is certainly better than the one we fielded last year. It is opening day of season 2, where we already have a huge test against Baltimore, so we're gonna find out very quick just how bad this team is, as JP Sears just left 2 fastballs right down the middle. Improvement is all I'm looking for this season, as Ryan Noda delivers our first hit, and I know we're not gonna be a good team, but this is the year we need to see some players establish themselves as a core part of this rebuild. Right now, we have a lot of fringe MLB players who just are not consistent enough yet, but I really feel like the potential is there for a lot of them to develop into good players. This game is tied at 1 apiece in the 4th, but our new signing Andy Ibanez just destroyed their pitcher's kneecap, and then right after that, Gunnar Henderson went yard off of Sears, as Baltimore's offense woke up and destroyed us. It would have taken a lot of luck to beat the Orioles, but now in our second series of the year, we're trailing by 1 to the White Sox. We have 2 men aboard with 0 outs, and now on the first pitch he saw, Abe Toro is going deep to center field, carrying this one all the way back to the wall and over the fence for a home run. That is a walk-off in our second series of the year, and just a reminder that Abe Toro scored the only run in the Baltimore game. That was a pinch hit walk-off home run, and looking at the box score, our entire offense did some work, but now in the second game of the series, we're in extras with a chance for another walk-off, and once again, how fitting is it that Abe Toro's up to bat trying to lay down a walk-off bunt, which is not gonna work. In hindsight, it might have been smarter to just go for the sacrifice fly, just like Brent Rooker did, because the runner at third base only has 24 speed, but this is able to get it done, as we've walked off 2 games in a row. What a dominant series from the Athletics, as they're gonna sweep the series, but now we're taking a look at this draft class for the first time, and we want to make it count because we have the number 2 pick. Now we're trying to avoid getting swept by the Reds in our 3rd series of the year, but we're down 1 and just missed a huge bases loaded opportunity, so now we're trying to put together another rally from scratch, but there's a double play. We've played get a really good team and really bad team, so the Reds are in the middle. So our performance against them could be a very good indicator of how much we've improved. The tying run is on first base, and now Ruiz is gonna steal second, and with him on the base paths, I feel a lot better about tying it up, and there's another free base. There are 2 outs, so it all comes down to this, but Ibanez swings through the splitter, and Cincinnati holds on. A big part of Moneyball, even when you're winning games, is preparing for a future without your best players, and guys like Brent Rooker and Esteury Ruiz are not as far from free agency as we think. So in scouting this year, I'm starting to think about finding their replacements, and Jackie Ludwig is the #1 position player in the class, and he looks absolutely dynamic. Obviously, I'd be happy taking him at #2, but I still want to scout guys like Oliver Rosado, Miguel Esposito, and Cesar Cairo, because my goal is to simply land the best talent possible, and Rosado actually looks really good. Our last draft was very good, as we now have the #5 prospect in baseball in Omar Valenzuela, but I really believe this one has a chance to be even better, and we could have the best farm system in baseball by next season. Unfortunately, this catcher is not as good as I was hoping, so at least for now, Jackie Ludwig is my favorite player, but maybe another position player could be even better. Our first division series of the year is against the reigning AL West champs, the Seattle Mariners, and to my surprise, we have a 500 record coming into this game, but Julio Rodriguez just tied the game, and now former Mariner Luke Raley is gonna get thrown out. Then unfortunately, Seattle would take the lead, so after being down 1 run, Seattle has rallied back to take the lead, and even though we have a man on first, there's 2 outs for Allen, who flies out, which gives Seattle the win. That is our starting shortstop, Nick Allen, who I didn't realize made the All-Star game last season, but even then, he's kinda just a plug-in starter until our #2 prospect, Jacob Wilson, is ready to go. I don't want to rush our prospects up to the show, but if we're gonna stay around 500, I need to make some moves soon, because even though our team looks a lot better than last year, we're still in a lot of close games against bad teams. It is very encouraging though to see that Luke Raley just hit a double, because he was the highest rated player we signed in free agency, and so far he's looking like a bust. Now he just needs someone to drive him in, but that's not gonna happen. So we're going to the 9th inning, where Danny Jimenez has 1 out and turns a double play. Now the Athletics have another chance to secure a walk-off against a bad team, and honestly, when I saw that Abe Toro was up, I thought we had a chance, but we're going to extra innings. Ruiz does have 99 clutch, so he's exactly who you want up in this scenario. So now there's runners at the corners for Langeliers, who's able to drive this over the second baseman's head and secure his team another walk-off victory. That win gets us above 500, so I really think this is the prime time to make a roster move, moving Jacob Wilson up to the majors. At the rate things are going, we are not going to finish last in the division, especially if we can beat the Angels, as a win in this series is going to sink them further into last place. That was a great win, and look who the player of the game is, as we just called up Jacob Wilson, but he's already making an impact. I know that Emmett Emerson cannot play defense to save his life, but this guy is just way too good of a hitter to pass up, so we honestly might have a very tough decision between him and Jackie Ludwig. I am honestly shocked this team is competing for first place in the AL West, but the difference maker has definitely been second baseman Andy Ibanez, who's leading the team in hits, RBIs, and OPS, and then behind him, Shea Langeliers is having the best season of his career alongside Abraham Toro, while it also seems that Luke Raley's starting to heat up. The 3 additions to our starting rotation are all playing pretty well, which has definitely made a difference, and compared to last year, these bullpen stats are absolute heaven. We have improved, but more than anything, I feel like our division simply isn't that good, as the Texas Rangers, who won the World Series just 2 seasons ago, are in last place, and Luke Raley just went opposite field to tie this game against them. This game would go into extra innings, where we have a chance to earn another walk-off victory, but Texas is going to make that a little bit more tricky. So now we need Jacob Wilson to come through, but that is a bad start as he pops up into shallow left field. You can never win them all, as we were unable to rally, but even worse, the Rangers would go on to sweep us. The Astros are slowly pulling away from us, so we desperately need to get out of this losing skid, but once again, Jacob Wilson is not showing any power. We failed to score runners at the corners, and then the Astros added on to their lead, so Oakland has now lost 5 division games in a row. They need to rebound, as they're down 2 runs in game number 3, but Brent Rooker's finally gonna deliver with a 3-run bases clearing double, as he gave his team the lead in 1 swing, but here come the Astros, hitting a solo home run to erase our lead in just 1 inning, but here's Ryan Noda with a double. Toro has been one of our clutchest players this season, and now he's gonna deliver one more time thanks to a bobble in the field, but unfortunately, the runner held at third base, so we're gonna need one more big play, and here's Ruiz driving this into left field over the head of the outfielder, as Toro's gonna round third, head for home, and that is a 2-run double for Esteury Ruiz. 2 runs against Josh Hader gave us the lead, and then 3 strikeouts strikeouts from Mason Miller secured the win. Now we're on a roll, winning 4 games in a row, and just like that, we jumped the Astros for first place. I really have no idea why we're playing this good, and I can certainly say I never expected us to be playing this good in season number 2, but losing a series to the White Sox would be some serious whiplash. We're trailing by 1 run, but here comes Brent Rooker launching a double into the gap in left center, so the tying run's on second with 2 outs, but unfortunately, the pitcher just robbed us. We are 2 outs away from a very embarrassing loss, but hold the phone, Luke Raley, are you kidding me? Launching this one into right field, and that gives us the lead. We've been waiting on a big play from this guy, and he picked a great time to get it done, as Oakland has taken the lead. Now with Mason Miller in, there is no chance Chicago comes back, as that was the most memorable win of the video. Looking at our stats shows that this season has been incredibly weird, because the guys performing well were never players who I expected to be key contributors, and then if I scroll down, you can see that guys like Luke Raley, Shea Langeliers, and Ryan Noda are all on cold streaks. We also had one of the worst rotations in the history of baseball last year, but apparently acquiring 274 overall players and a 68 overall was all it took to solve that problem. Even though we're in first place, the next couple weeks could decide our season because we're taking on a string of playoff teams, starting with the Yankees, but here's a Shea Langeliers home run in extra innings. Mason Miller would close it out as we won a close game, but that didn't stop New York from winning the next 2 games, dropping Oakland all the way down to 3rd place. They would not make the playoffs if the season ended today, so we desperately need a bounce-back performance against the division-leading Astros, but they just tied the game with a bases-loaded double. That pitch was left right down the middle, which is certainly a tough break for Oakland because they were up 2 runs, and now Rooker gives this a drive where it is caught at the track. I can feel our season starting to slip away as we're in extras, where we desperately need our bullpen to hold this down because this series is a must-win, but unfortunately, there's runners at the corners, and there it is, the weak single walks it off for Houston, so it really feels like Oakland has lost their way. On the bright side, it's time for the MLB draft, where I'm deciding between 2 players, except that decision just got made a lot easier because Jackie Ludwig is hurt. That is very unfortunate because I was thinking he could be a great player, but it's not much of a problem because I really like Emerson. After Emerson, though, there's a lot of very good pitching prospects who could be options in the 2nd round and beyond, but maybe my favorite gem in the entire class is left fielder Cecil Daniel, who looks like he could develop into a pretty decent power hitter with some speed. It is time to begin the draft, and I'm really hoping they don't take Emerson, and they are not going to, so this is a very stress-free 1st round pick. I secured my favorite player in the draft, but the Reds just made this a very complicated selection, taking Craig Vogel right in front of me, which is definitely disappointing, but I still really like Dan Kirby, and I think I'm gonna take him in this spot. Our next selection is just 2 picks later, and because there's a long time before my next position players are projected to be selected, I'm just gonna make this simple, doubling up at pitcher with Craig Peters. He has a guaranteed high potential range, and after taking him, I wanted to triple up on pitcher with Ed Wallace, but that was not gonna happen. So in round 3, I'm just gonna stay true to my board, selecting Cecil Daniel. Unfortunately, after that, at 102, the Braves took Josh Bennett, who very well might have been my selection, but honestly, it's not a big deal because we're pretty deep at first base, so I'm gonna double up at left field, going for Mike Hafey, hoping we can hit on at least one of these left fielders. Then in round 5, I wanted to take Scott Rubio, but unfortunately, I snoozed a little too long, so this draft really is not going my way, so I'm gonna take a flyer on this left fielder, who's at least gonna have pretty good potential for us. Now in round 6, I'm trying to decide between one of these 4 pitchers, and at this point, it's just gonna be whoever the scouts have a higher grade on, which is Carmine Novoa, who will be the last selection of our 2nd draft. We have fallen to an even 500 at the All-Star break, and looking at the stats, it really makes sense why this happened, because Andy Ibanez was definitely our best player, but has since fallen off, while all of our starting pitchers, aside from JP Sears, is starting to come back down to earth. The tough part about Oakland is usually in this situation, I'm willing to be a buyer at the deadline to try to make that next jump, but the issue is I really don't think this is a playoff team, and even if it was, we really need these prospects. This year we have 2 All-Stars as Mason Miller goes back-to-back, but the more surprising pick is Danny Jimenez, who has a 10-1 record and some really good stats to go with that at 31 years old. Maybe there's a couple small trades I can make if we play well the next 2 weeks. And our first series coming out of the break is against the Texas Rangers, and in a tie game, Adolis Garcia launches a no-doubter. After that, we did not even get a hit off the Rangers, and it's crazy to think that just 2 weeks ago, we were in first and they were in last. Unfortunately, we would only win one of our first 7 games coming out of the break, so it's insane just how fast this season changed, as I think we're actually gonna have to be sellers. I really want to capitalize on Abraham Abraham Toro and Seth Brown's pretty good seasons. And starting with Toro, I found a pretty good trade partner in the New York Mets who could really use another infielder. Toro does have experience playing second base, and since they're making a playoff push, they're trying to add a pretty solid bat to their lineup and are willing to give up their number 11 prospect, 19-year-old second baseman Marco Vargas. The Padres are a very loaded team, but they have a very clear hole at left field, and Seth Brown could be a pretty good answer for them, putting together 2 solid seasons in a row. Also, because he's a 72 overall 32-year-old, he is not going to have a high price, so in return, San Diego is sending us the 3rd worst pitcher in their organization. After that, I was pretty sure I was done making moves, but I found a good fit for Zach Jackson that I cannot pass up, as Milwaukee's looking to add another arm to their bullpen, and in return, they're going to send us back an 18-year-old reliever who may have C potential, but that walks per 9 is going to be deadly someday. We are officially past the trade deadline, which means we can finally view our draft picks, and after selling on 3 very good players, we need some good news, and that is exactly what I like to see. There is a bunch of blue right there. Our first pick, Emerson, has 90 potential and a 65 overall, so honestly, I could see him getting to the majors within the next 2 years, as he's looking like an elite hitter. And right after him, we got 2 pitchers. One of them is 99 overall. You've got to be kidding me. Both of these guys are major projects, as Dan Kirby only has a 21 walks per 9, and Craig Peters is not much better with 39, but with the highest potential he could possibly have, I cannot complain. I was very bummed out that a few players went right in front of Cecil Daniel and Mike Hafey, but given that they have 94 and 91 potential, I think it worked out just fine, and down the line, Cecil Daniel could easily be one of the best players on our offense with decent power, with very well-rounded hitting stats, and 84 speed. Then we kinda took a flyer on Antonio Ramirez, who is guaranteed to have a great potential range, but he only comes in at 47 overall. And then our final pick, Carmine Novoa, has 85 potential and 55 overall. After seeing our draft, I have a lot more confidence in the future, as I decided there was no point in playing out the rest of the season, and even though we did finish in last in the AL West, this team improved so much from season number 1, and it really feels like we have a lot more direction moving forward. Just like last year, we're not bringing back our free agents, which of course means we have some more space to bring more guys in. I didn't want to spend too much money because most of our best talent is now hitting arbitration, including our best hitter Brent Rooker, who is now just 2 seasons away from free agency, so we need to trade him at some point this year. His trade value is only going to go down after this, so it finally feels like it's the time to send him away, and the Arizona Diamondbacks look like the perfect trade partner. Thankfully, they also have a center field prospect that I'm very interested in getting in return, as Slade Caldwell looks like he could develop into a great major league center fielder, so I'm going to pull the trigger, making the biggest trade of the video. Losing our best hitter definitely hurts, but we're still a long way from contending, as we're down 3 runs and Paul Skeens is putting on a clinic, and if this is the way the entire season is going to go, this could easily be the year we move on from a lot of our core and load up on future talent. JP Sears took a huge step forward last year, but he does not have it today, and as you can expect, we are doing terribly against Skeens, only collecting 2 hits, as that was a game I really want to forget. Even without Brent Rooker, I still feel like this roster is better than it was at this point last year, and we have to remember that Omar Valenzuela is very close to reaching the majors, along with another first baseman, Nick Kurtz. This year in the draft, we're picking at number 6, and of course, as I always do, I'm trying to find the best position player possible, and since I heard a rumor today that Backyard Baseball could be making a comeback, we have to scout Pablo Sanchez. The more games we play this season, the more I'm realizing just how much our hot stretch was a fluke last year, but an extra innings win against the Astros could help us build confidence, but we're down 1 run. Thankfully though, there's runners at the corners, so all we need is a sacrifice fly, which Ruiz does deliver on the first pitch he sees to tie the game, but of course, Houston came right back with 2 runs. That is another frustrating early season loss, and aside from the Brent Rooker trade, I really think part of the reason for this team stagnation is that the prospects they did have in season 1 simply have not developed. I'm talking about guys like Lawrence Butler and Zach Geloff, who are still in AAA, but also Tyler Soderstrom is only 74 overall, and then there's long-term starters like Shea Langeliers and Ruiz who have simply not stepped up and improved their game. Don't get me wrong though, the future is still very bright for Oakland, who have the #1 farm system hands down, and as I mentioned before, a lot of these guys are on the cutting edge of making the majors. Every season, it seems that a series against the White Sox helps build our confidence, and it seems that this season is going to be no exception, as we're in extra innings looking for a sweep, and Mickey Moniak delivers a 2-run triple. What a great play from Moniak, as Langeliers is going to reward him, and Mason Miller had no problem closing it out. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Pablo Sanchez is going to be very good, but there's still quite a few first-round first-round options I'm very interested in, like Rex Sheets and Samuel Mota. That series against the White Sox has given us a lot more confidence, as now we're going for another sweep against the Angels. But this game will also come down to the wire, as we're tied in the bottom of the 9th and Tyler Soderstrom just got unlucky. Fortunately though, it is still tied in the bottom of the 10th, where Ryan Noda comes up once again with his second RBI, including the game winner. This has been a promising start to the season for Ryan Noda and the rest of the offense, but most notably Mickey Moniak, who is really making us forget about Brent Rooker. This huge hot streak has us in first place in the division, and we have a chance to continue our hot streak in a tie game with the bases loaded against the Cardinals. That is another series sweep for the Athletics, and a huge reason for that is the play of our starting rotation, as we have 3 guys on hot streak, while our bullpen is also standing on business. However, we need to keep this momentum going because we're being tested against a very good Guardians team, but fortunately, in the first game of the series, we clutched up an extra innings to take the lead in the 11th, so now it's Miller time, and as you can see, he is gonna earn another save. Now it's game 2 of the series, which is just as close, with the Guardians tying it in the 7th inning, and Cleveland made a deep playoff run last season, so we really want this win to boost our confidence as Noda goes deep all the way back to the wall where it is caught. He was so close to a 2-run homer, but unfortunately, the Guardians beat us in extras, and unfortunately, we would go on to lose the series. We still have the lead in the West, but that can change at any time considering that we're starting to cool off, as in this game against Houston, we could have turned a double play, but that error is gonna allow the tying run to score. So it looks like we're gonna have another close game against our division rival, as we're in the top of the 8th, and we're starting it off with a double. The go-ahead run is in scoring position, and after advancing him to third, Langoliers' sac fly gives us back the lead, and then our bullpen held it down as Luke Raley launches this one into right field. That is a no-doubter that extends our lead and gives the Athletics a bounce-back win. I think the best part about this season is that it's not just players at the major league level who are performing, but also at the minor league level, as guys like Zach Geloff and Lawrence Butler could get another shot at the show, while in our AA system, first-round pick Emmett Emerson is raking, alongside a long list of other players. I guess there's a reason we have 4 top 15 prospects, along with 10 total prospects in the top 100, and I think the only reason Omar Valenzuela and Nick Kurtz are not at the major league level is that Ryan Noda is having a pretty solid year. I am going to bring up one of our draft picks, but it's certainly not a top prospect, as Brian Roman is already up to AAA at 19 years old, and the last pick of our first draft already looks like he's ready for the majors with 79 walks per 9, so he's going to replace Ken Waldichuk as our 5th starter, who's having a pretty rough year. Brian Roman's making his debut against the White Sox, but he gets humbled very quickly as Luis Arias, of all people, launches a deep home run, so I really hope this is not a sign of bad things to come, because we need him to be good. As you can imagine, losing to the White Sox in your first MLB game would not exactly be a flex, so I'm glad we just tied the game, but now in the very same inning, we are looking to take the lead. The bases are juiced for JJ Bleday, and all he needs to do is hit this one deep for a sacrifice fly to make this a 2-1 ball game. So there's 2 aboard for Luke Raley, who already has 1 hit today, but his second one is gonna be huge. That is a bases clearing double. To put it lightly, Luke Raley has not been a good player ever since coming over from Seattle, but maybe that double can be a step in the right direction, and our rally is not done. Ruiz hits a single, Raley's rounding third, heading for home. It's gonna be close. He is safe. After Brian Roman gave up a run, we've come back with 5 of our own and make that 6. And this game is proving that our offense has taken a step up even without Brent Rooker, as Shea Langoliers goes the other way, deep, and it is gone for another 3 runs. Shea Langoliers has exploded into a key piece of our offense alongside Jacob Wilson and Mickey Moniak, and I know he has an 8-run lead, but ever since Brian Roman gave up that run, he has been lights out. In his debut, the rookie only allowed 1 run and 5 hits, so overall, this is the most complete game we've seen this season. Unfortunately, right at this point in the video, I took a break, but when I came back, I forgot to hit record like an absolute fool who hasn't been making videos for his entire life, so magically, we skipped the back half of the season, and to be completely real with you guys, I debated starting this entire video over. However, I've already sunk 20 hours into this franchise, so at this point, for the video, there is no turning back, and this is just a blip in the grand scope of the 10-year rebuild, as this roster is probably looking a lot different to you, but stay with me here. Unlike last year, our success continued for the rest of the season as we won 95 games and earned a first-round bye, and while the additions of Omar Valenzuela and Nick Kurtz were a huge reason for that, we also took full advantage of being buyers at the deadline. Brendan Donovan is one of the most versatile players in all of baseball, and his disciplined approach at the plate makes him the perfect candidate for a Moneyball rebuild, so I decided to acquire him and and his remaining year and a half of team control from the MLB worst Cardinals, which of course was not going to be cheap and cost us one of our best prospects, Max Muncy. Of course, this was not a one-for-one deal though, and I also threw in high C potential pitching prospect Cole Miller, which I thought was an appropriate package for Donovan. However, I was not done there and really wanted to add an ace, and there was no better option than Josiah Gray, who has made back-to-back All-Star games. And because both players had the same amount of team control, it made sense that both sides wanted to move on, especially while Gray's trade value was at its peak. As you can imagine, the price for Gray was equally high, and I did not want to do this, but I gave up one of my favorite pitching prospects, Luis Morales, who was definitely the key piece of this trade alongside Del Rosario, who's kind of just another high C potential guy. I felt I had to make these moves because we had 3 All-Stars this year, as it should be no surprise to you that Mason Miller made the game for the 3rd year in a row, but the very pleasant surprise joining him was Shea Langoliers, who definitely cooled down in the back half of the year, but still truly broke out as one of the best offensive catchers in the game. Then relief pitcher Kyle Muller was our 3rd and final selection, but honestly, it could have been anybody out of this pen because this group was a huge product of our success and is one of the biggest reasons we're playing in October. This was also around the time that I added Omar Valenzuela and Nick Kurtz to the roster, which I made room for by moving Jordan Diaz down, but also trading Luke Raley to the Marlins for a bag of chips. Omar didn't get a lot of action, naturally because he was only facing left-handed hitters this season, but even then I did notice he was heating up towards the end of the year. However, the complete opposite can be said for Nick Kurtz, who came in right away and started raking against righties, so I'm very excited to see what type of impact these guys are going to make in October and beyond. But as you can see, this winning season did wonders for our team's development. However, no player was as big of a winner as Brian Roman. Since making the roster in June, our 6th-round rookie put up a 2.38 ERA and a 1.08 whip, but there's also players who broke out who we've been waiting on for a very long time, like JJ Bleday, who absolutely showed off his plate discipline and his power on his way to an 812 OPS year. Then there's also the player who may have the highest amount of pressure on him, Ryan Noda, who's been fending off both Nick Kurtz and Omar Valenzuela all season long, but he rose to the occasion, putting up what was definitely an above-average year. It is time for the playoffs, where unfortunately we have to take on Baltimore in the ALDS. And just to be real for a second, upsets do happen, and we've had plenty of them on this channel, but this might be the most overpowered team I've ever seen. So even though I still believe in our Moneyball squad, I'm just asking you guys to brace yourselves. Just to make things interesting, they have Zach Gallen, so our ace is literally 5 overall lower than them, and look who their leadoff hitter is. I do not know if you guys remembered this, but in season number 1, I almost drafted this 3rd baseman, Ryan Roper, in the 3rd round of the draft, and at the time, I honestly thought I made the right decision, but he's 76 overall and hitting leadoff for a literal super team. That is a brutal miss in the draft, as Baltimore scores 2 runs, so I'm fearing this could be a very long day, but thankfully Brendan Donovan gets 2 aboard. So our breakout star hitter, Mickey Moniak, has a chance to drive in a run, but that is a double play. It was unclear who was going to step up after trading Brent Rooker in the offseason, but Moniak truly was that dude, along with Shea Langoliers, even though neither of them came up big in the clutch. Gray gave up another run, but thankfully Mickey's gonna redeem himself, getting 1 right back. So now there's 1 out for Langoliers, who has a lot of power, and he's gonna use it going the other way, and while this is a fly out, it does score a sac fly. Our offense clearly is not going away without putting up a fight, as there are 2 aboard for Noda, who swings and misses at the high fastball. That was our chance to retake the momentum, but maybe our efforts were not for nothing as we continue to get guys on base, and there are juiced bases with 1 out for Nick Kurtz, but unfortunately this is popped up behind home plate. Ryan Noda cannot afford to leave more runners on base, as this is a dribbler up the middle that is not going to get through, but the throw is offline. That is such a lucky break and gives us the lead. I thought this game was going to be a complete blowout after the first 2 innings, but this team has shown so much heart to fight back, as Josiah Gray has also fought back, and there's a 2-run bomb from Moniak. We scored 8 unanswered runs to win game 1, but now we're going to find out if rookie Brian Roman can handle the bright lights. He has had such a good rookie season, and I'm just curious if that momentum is going to carry forward. And to be fair, he only gave up 2 runs in 7 innings, and now we're going to tie it in the bottom of the 8th. All things considered, that is a very quality outing for a rookie starting pitcher, and now Mickey Moniak is going to drive in the go-ahead sac fly. So we're leaving the save in the hands of Mason Miller, who unfortunately just gave up 2 runs to Ryan Roper. It appears we have choked this game away, but maybe not so fast, because our offense continues to clutch it out, and I forgot we're facing Bautista. This is our last out, and Ruiz is up with his 99 clutch rating, but no matter how early I swing, it seems I'm late until he throws the splitter, as I can only guess the pitch he's gonna throw, and even if I do, there's a fat chance I don't hit it, as Mason Miller blew the Game 2 save. Ryan Roper just took that game away from us, and I passed on him for Zach Goodman, who may be a fine player with higher potential than Roper, but it is definitely annoying watching him destroy our hopes and dreams. Game 3 is already off to a very bad start, but I spoke too soon as we're striking back with more singles than The Bachelor, as another 2 runs in the 7th gives us a 4-run lead. But once again, Baltimore comes out of nowhere to take the lead with 7 runs in the 8th inning. I wanted to stop simulating and jumped in, but missed my chance, but I think it still is very clear that we were not ready for this team. And the tough reality with Moneyball is so much of our core is hitting free agency next year, so season 4 absolutely needs to be World Series or bust. The biggest challenge for us this offseason is staying under $60 million because a ton of players in our core are facing arbitration. So honestly, we really only have the money to bring in one core player in Yoan Moncada, who should be an upgrade at third base. I also decided to extend our championship window by giving Josiah Gray and Brendan Donovan a bit more money this year to avoid paying them heavily next season, which certainly makes both of those trades a lot more worth it, as now I'm in the Rule 5 draft, which I don't normally show, but there's one player I really like. As you know, we are very weak at second base, and at least on offense, Vaughn Grisham's kind of an upgrade who will only cost us $1 million, so for the first time in a few seasons, I'm pulling the trigger in the Rule 5. After some intense budgeting, our payroll hit exactly $60 million, and there is no doubt this is the deepest this team has ever been. Before we start the year, I just remembered that I lost all the footage from last year's draft class, so I'm going to show that to you guys real quick, starting with our first round pick, Samuel Mota, who's no doubt looking like our shortstop of the future. And then in the same class, we also added 2 more A potential players in Morris Rushing and Felipe Aguilar. It is hard to imagine having a better farm system than this, as we have 3 guys in the top 10 and 12 in the top 100, so I think we're very close to seeing more homegrown players than Brian Roman, Omar Valenzuela, and Nick Kurtz. It is opening day of what should be our most competitive season yet, coming off of an ALDS loss, and in the first inning, we're showing plenty of offense, but unfortunately we strand 2 runners, and we remain tied in the 3rd inning until Mickey Moniak, who hit that double earlier, drives in the first run. However, Josiah Gray just gave up 2 runs, so missing out on those 2 runs are really hurting us, but now Ryan Noda's going deep into center field, back to the wall where it's caught. That was perfect contact, but we left 2 more runners on. But now in the 7th inning, Shea Langeliers goes yard. Once again, we have the lead, but not for long. Toronto just scored 3 more runs, and it's certainly been frustrating that they've one-upped us all game long as Omar Valenzuela flies out, and we lost our first game of the year. I'm really hoping that doesn't affect our momentum too much, but thankfully we won the next 3 games of the series, so we have an early lead in our division as we're taking on the Angels, and here's Mickey Moniak continuing an electric start to his year with a 2 RBI double. Those were the first 2 runs for either side, and now we're gonna add another one on this wild pitch as Oakland's off to another hot start. After a month, we have the lead in the AL West, which is no surprise considering Jacob Wilson looks like an MVP candidate while Yoan Moncada is proving to be a great pickup, but if we're gonna sustain this lead, our pitching rotation has to be better. I really hope last year's success on the mound was not a fluke, because that was one of the only reasons we made the playoffs, as we just dropped a series to the Astros, and our lead is quickly disappearing. If we lose this series to Texas, we could also lose our division lead, but thankfully Nick Kurtz is not gonna let that happen easily, because he cleared the bases to give us our first lead of the day, and eventually a big win. Apparently that sparked our offense, because we had 3 days in a row with double-digit runs, leading into another division series against the 2nd place Mariners. We're trailing by 1 run with Jacob Wilson on second base, but have no fear, Mickey Moniak is here once again to tie it up, as he continues to be the best free agent pickup of this entire video, and now Brendan Donovan's trying to score him with a blooper that's gonna drop. I did not think that had a chance, but somehow it manages to touch grass, and now Ryan Noda's gonna score another run, and Mason Miller closed out another victory. I am not surprised we have a 5-game lead, but I am shocked that Ryan Noda has become our best offensive player, especially considering we have 2 first base prospects, but sure enough, he's outplayed both of them, and Nick Kurtz might even need some extra time at AAA. The rest of the squad, though, has played pretty well as Jacob Wilson continues his ascension to an all-star, but one guy who really needs to get better is Shea Langeliers, who's really struggled out the gate. I'm also relieved to see that our pitching has been a lot better, even though a guy like Kyle Muller has taken a step back in the pen, alongside Mason Miller, Miller, who is off to an awful start. At the All-Star break, we're 62-34, but it's also worth noting that Miller did turn things around enough to make another All-Star game, along with a bit of a surprise breakout player, Uri Ruiz. He's having an amazing season, hitting nearly 300 with an 847 OPS, which is definitely good because it maximizes his trade value right before his final year of arbitration. It has been awesome to see players like Ruiz and JJ Bleday become a core part of this team, because without their development and some other guys on that season 1 roster, we would not be a playoff team as we take the lead against the Astros coming out of the break. This is a huge game to raise our confidence, and Mickey Moniak's gonna help with 2 on in the 9th inning, hitting a no-doubter to right center field, which gave Mason Miller a very easy save. The really tough part about this year is I'd love to make another move at the deadline, but unfortunately, we're completely out of money, so we better hope we stay hot into the playoffs, or else it's gonna be a very painful end of the year. Now that we're pretty deep in the rebuild, I am not gonna be focusing on the draft process. However, I have to show this one because it's ridiculous, as we not only drafted Mason Miller's potential replacement in the first round, but also got extremely lucky on a 99 potential power-hitting right fielder named Reggie Griffin, who will definitely be up in the show in just a few years. Oakland finished the year with 98 wins and an AL West that looks completely flipped upside down, but checking out our stats has me amazed just how much better we are, as of all people, I did not expect Ryan Noda to become our best player. Last year in the playoffs, we got pinned against a very good Baltimore team, but as you can see, this year they're in a different bracket, and I'm very relieved we're taking on our division rivals, the Angels. However, in this universe, Mike Trout has stayed healthy, and they have Cody Bellinger, but at least in my eyes, the most unrealistic part of this team is that Joe Adell became a good player. Unfortunately, they opened up with a Mike Trout homer, and the offense I was just raving about is being shut out through 9 innings. This is exactly how we started last year's series against Baltimore, as we are down to our last out with the tying run at first base, but this one is not over yet. Our most productive hitter can win this game, and it all comes down to a full count as he whiffs at the fastball, and Los Angeles wins game number 1. Last year, our offense came to play against Baltimore, but so far, they have not scored a single run, at least until Wilson drives in a sacrifice fly, but even then, we're down 3 runs in the 3rd inning, so we desperately need to deliver with the bases loaded, but it's not gonna happen. Nothing gets me quite as frustrated as leaving runners on base, and Ryan Noda is gonna do it again, so after a 7-1 loss, we're facing elimination. This is actually very fitting because Moneyball has proven effective in building solid regular season teams, but no matter how good they do, they can't seem to win in the playoffs, as we're in danger of being swept by a team that we finished in front of. I also need to remind you guys, we're down to our last dollar of payroll, so this offseason we're definitely losing Mickey Moniak to free agency, which is gonna make it suck even more if we lose this series. It's a 1-run game in the 9th inning, and here's a double play, so Mason Miller is gonna have a rough job, but all we can do is hold our breath as Joe Adell gets a hold of one deep into right field, but thankfully that one's gonna stay in the yard. The tying run is on first base, as Mason's ahead 0-2, and here's the pop-up into shallow center field. Ruiz charging in with plenty of speed. He is gonna track it down to help Oakland avoid the sweep. We've matched our playoff win total from last year and have 2 runs to start game 4, but of course, LA was not gonna give up without a fight, as here's Shea Langeliers to save the day with 2 on, as this double's gonna tie it up, and there's still 1 out for Donovan, who hits it right to shortstop, but it scores the go-ahead run. This offense deserves a lot of credit for rallying, and Ruiz just hit a 2-run bomb, so our offense is on fire, as it's all gonna come down to a winner-takes-all game 5. Neither team has scored through 5 innings, at least until Moncada goes the other way for the first run of the day, but the inning may not be done, as Jacob Wilson has 2 aboard and 2 outs, but clutches up with a bases-clearing single. We have a 3-run cushion with 2 innings to go, but of course, the Angels would bring it back within 1, so we're calling Miller's number one more time, as we are just 1 strike away from advancing to the next round, which thankfully he's able to get. The Los Angeles Angels just blew a 2-game series lead against us, so there's no doubt we're pumped up going into a series against the Tigers. I was truly expecting a rematch against Baltimore, but somehow this Tigers team beat them, and in game 1, we're already in a very close game, tied up at 3 apiece. A walk-off to start the series would be absolutely insane, but their shortstop just made the play of his life, so instead of having a man on first, we have 1 out, as Langeliers dribbles one up the middle, the shortstop gets there, but he's actually able to beat out the throw. For whatever reason, the game decided to give us that play, but it is not gonna matter because we're going to extra innings, where the Tigers opened up with a double and eventually an RBI. Now the pressure is really on for Oakland, and even though it's nothing compared to overcoming a 2-0 series lead, Detroit does win win game number 1. Thankfully though, we bounced back in game 2 as 3 home runs helped us win 6-1. The winner of game 2 is going to have a massive advantage, and it looked like the A's were about to win it, but then Detroit came out with 3 runs. Ruiz is our last chance as there's 2 on, but unfortunately he whiffed a slider right down the pipe, and now he flies out to right field as Detroit regains the series lead. Falling behind 3-1 would be an absolute nightmare, but unfortunately 2 Riley Green home runs is going to make that a reality, as this one wasn't even close. Our rotation has been really bad throughout October, but at least our offense did just barely enough to win, and at least we need to win 2 more games if we want to go to the World Series, but we're bringing it down to the wire. Mickey Moniak just tied the game in the 7th inning, but this rally may not be over as there's only 1 out and MJ Melendez is going to give us our first lead of the game, but based on the way we've pitched, I do not trust us with a 1-run cushion. That really should have been a 3-run shot for Ryan Noda as he launched it to the parking lot, but this one's going to get down as Langeliers is coming home, head first slide, he is out. I'm going to be very furious if this costs us the game as Omar Valenzuela gets a good piece, but it's popped up. And while it would have been cool to see our first ever draft pick go yard, it did not affect the final result. We once again fought back to force game 7, and now our offense is on a roll as we struck first with 3 runs and JJ Bleday just launched a 2-run shot. This one is gonna be over. I thought our last playoff comeback was cool, but this one blows it out of the water. And given everything we had to endure to get to this point, there's no doubt we deserve to be in the World Series. We're certainly the better team on paper, so this series was way more difficult than it had to be. But regardless, a win's a win, and you're looking at your 2027 American League champs. Unfortunately though, you always have to worry about the Dodgers becoming a super team, and of course they did that and made the World Series. And I know we've shown a lot of heart throughout the playoffs, but we're gonna need more than that to get past this squad. They finally scored the first run in the 7th inning, so we really need to answer. But after a double play and a 4-run inning, our dreams of a fast start are crushed. Then unfortunately, game 2 did not go better, as we've had no success scoring against the Dodgers, and that continues in game 3, so we're in great danger of being swept. We have found great value in players like MJ Melendez and Mickey Moniak, and adopting the analytical approach of Moneyball has definitely helped us get an edge without breaking the bank. But being realistic, the moment I saw their roster, I knew we were going to have a very slim chance to win this thing. I know I didn't show any gameplay from that sweep, but it was just too embarrassing to watch. And while our ownership is very pleased that fans are going to be getting back in the stands, we have some very tough decisions to make this offseason because we're not built to compete after next year. We were already down to our last penny this year, and with so many players getting further along in arbitration, we certainly cannot keep everybody. And right off the bat, this offseason is starting with a very tough choice. Josiah Gray and Brendan Donovan are both on team options, while another star, Mickey Moniak, is hitting free agency asking for over $7 million. And given our budget, I feel like we can only afford to keep one of these guys. I think our best option for Gray is to sign and trade him, because we cannot afford to be giving 1/6 of our payroll to one guy. And I think I found the perfect trade partner in the Arizona Diamondbacks, who not only need starting pitching, but they have a surplus of outfielders, which will help us set off the loss of either Brendan Donovan or Mickey Moniak. The player I want in return is Drew Jones, who still has really high potential, but simply has not put it together at the plate just yet. I am really hoping he develops into Ruiz's replacement, but in the present, that narrows our decision down to one of Mickey Moniak or Brendan Donovan. And honestly, I thought this was going to be a lot more difficult than it was, but looking at the stats, there's really only one true option. Brendan Donovan is by far the more valuable player, and it's only going to cost a bit more money to keep him, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Arbitration is getting more expensive, so there's no way we're keeping everyone, so I had no choice but to salary dump some more players like starting pitcher Joey Estes, while also not offering arbitration to role players like Max Schumann. However, all of these moves help me put more money back into the team, as a guy like Matt Waldron is significantly cheaper than Estes and JP Sears, while the money that we could have paid Mickey Moniak is now going to Alex Kirilloff and Nolan Gorman. It may not seem like much, but I really feel like our offense has taken a massive step forward this offseason, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. But there's no doubt that losing 3 of our starting pitchers, Joey Estes, Josiah Gray, and JP Sears, really hurts. However, I think I may have found a solution in the Rule 5 draft in Dre Jameson, who is a reliever, but he has 56 stamina. And just because I'm curious, I want to see what his overall goes up to if we move him to starting pitcher. And sure enough, he is even better than Josiah Gray at 88 overall. And the craziest part about it is he's only going to cost $850,000. That is Moneyball right there. Just to keep him at his in-game position, I am going to move him back to reliever. But now that I'm actually looking at the staminas in our bullpen, bullpen, this could be a legitimate strategy next season. We have once again pinched our budget down to the last penny, but somehow we escaped that challenging offseason with a better team than we came into it with. Saving $10 million on starting pitching allowed us to invest more into our offense, so it really feels like this is the year, especially after making the World Series last season, and now in extra innings on opening day, Ruiz drives in an RBI double. I'll be the first to admit that I cannot see anything due to this batter's eye, but it really helps that they're leaving changeups right in the zone, as we're going to score another run and get our season off to a very good start. It is nice to see one of our new additions, Nolan Gorman, go yard in his debut, as our season's off to a very good start, but we have a tough in-division test against the Rangers. We're in extras after tying the game in the 8th inning, but Nick Kurtz on the first pitch he saw secures our first lead, so now it's all up to Mason Miller to end this game. Unfortunately for Oakland, he is leaving the American League in saves for a reason and locks down another one. Our success would continue as we have 69 wins at the break, but at least to me, the best thing about this is our experiment moving our relievers to starters are paying off, as they are both doing super well. That is just the tip of the iceberg though, as our offense is looking the best it ever has, and specifically, it really looks like we're hitting for more power than ever. It seems our entire pitching staff is also playing well, and that extends not only to the starters, but also into the bullpen, so it is no surprise we have 3 all-star pitchers, and already at age 29, I think Mason Miller is approaching closer GOAT status. As much as I'd love to make one more move at the deadline, we have literally no money to get that done, so we better hope this team is good enough to make another World Series all on its own, or else we're going to be in some pretty deep trouble. The A's did win 109 games, including all of their last 10, and it took all series long, but we finally have an award winner, and that is Mason Miller, who won Reliever of the Year. This is very well deserved, as he had 54 saves and an ERA very close to 1, but of course he did not carry this offense all on his own, as we had quite a few players above 800 OPS, which is why I'm not surprised we were 5th in batting average and 2nd in runs, but our starting rotation was definitely our best success story this season, as we were 1st in ERA, and the breakout seasons from Brian Roman and Rule 5 draft pickup reliever Dre Jameson were a huge reason for that. It was a great season, but now we have a rematch against a very familiar foe, the Baltimore Orioles, and if you remember, they're the first team to eliminate us from the playoffs in this video, so revenge is on the line. We are tied up at 3 apiece in the 9th, where we have a walk-off chance, and we have a man aboard with 1 out, but Blade hit this one right to Holiday, who's gonna turn the double play. That is a missed opportunity, but thankfully for us, our bullpen was able to hold it down, so we have a second chance to walk this one off in the 10th inning as Ryan Noda goes the other way. That's gonna stay fair and get 2 runners in scoring position. Now all we need is for someone to drive in the winning run, as there's an error in the infield. Kurtz is coming home, and the Oakland Athletics have taken game 1. That is a big confidence boost because of how our series went against them a few years ago, as we're trying to break a 0-0 tie, but Gorman's not deep enough, and then right after that, there's a 2-run bomb. Fortunately though, we did get the bases loaded with 0 outs, and last game's hero, Nick Kurtz, sends this one deep. Does it have the distance? It does, over the fence for a grand slam. What a moment from Nick Kurtz, who has struggled at times throughout his major league career, but even then, there's been no doubt that he has plenty of power. Baltimore's pitching just collapsed, allowing another home run, and now we have a chance to do more damage with runners at the corners, which is exactly what Ryan Noda does, following up with a 3-run shot. Oakland's offense is coming alive in real time, as they are just 1 win away from a huge playoff sweep, and now all they need to do is survive with a 1-run lead in the 8th inning, but Kirilloff is going to go a step further, scoring a run. That was a great time for a big play, but now we're in a bit of trouble, as the Orioles brought this back within 1, but there's a strikeout on Holiday. After that, baseball's best closer sent us to the ALCS as we secured a sweep, and fortunately for us, our next opponent is nowhere near as deep as Baltimore. However, we cannot underestimate them, as we're trailing by a run, at least until Yohan Moncada gets a hold of this one into deep right center, where it is gonna be caught. He was just inches away from tying this game, but now Jacob Wilson's going the other way. That sounded good off the bat, as the right fielder gives chase and is unable to get it as it one-hops the fence. The bases are loaded for Alex Kirilloff after an intentional walk, and this sacrifice fly is gonna score Ruiz, as we have come back to tie the game and are going to extras. It seems that Oakland has all the momentum, but this man's throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs that I'm having a hard time catching up to, but maybe we don't need to, as Melendez has enough power to send this over the fence for an extra inning walk-off home run. He went Oppo Taco to win game number 1, and that was actually MJ's 2nd home run in a 4-hit performance. This team is looking hungry after a huge World Series loss last year, but now they need another comeback, and I was a little surprised that single snuck its way through, but now now MJ Melendez hits into a double play. So now there's 2 outs with a man on third for Nolan Gorman, who swings at the first pitch he saw, but it goes off the pitcher's shin. Can he recover? Gorman to first base is thrown out. That was the team's first playoff loss of the season, but they bounced back in game 3 as Miller closes it out. So it's time for a very pivotal game 4 where they're once again gonna have to play from behind. If we do advance to the World Series, we'll most likely take on the Dodgers again. And right now, my biggest concern is if we're struggling against the Royals, how are we gonna do against them? And Nolan Gorman just went deep, so maybe there's a little more hope. 2 more runs in the 9th made this a decisive win. So we are 1 win away from the World Series, but down 1 run yet again. We have delivered a huge home run. That is Nick Kurtz's second of the postseason, and this one is just as important. And just being honest, I really feel bad for this Royals team because they're in danger of losing the series 4-1 despite having the lead in nearly every game. But just as I'm saying that, they redeemed themselves because Mason Miller blew the save. The game decided not to give us another signature win, which I guess makes sense, as game 6 is another close one, and I thought we were gonna score, but this is a double play. We could be going back to extra innings, but we still have a chance to walk it off in the 9th, and that single from Von Grissom was a great start, but unfortunately, it's followed up by a double play. That puts us in another extra innings playoff game, as we did get the winning run on first base, but another double play ends the inning. I am holding my breath for our bullpen every single at bat, but aside from a few hiccups, they've been pretty reliable, so we have a very good chance to win this. The winning run is officially on board, so I do not want to mess this up like we did last time, but unfortunately, MJ Melendez flew out, but Von Grissom's gonna keep the inning alive. This is one of Langlear's last chances to be a hero, as his contract expires after this year, so at least he gets aboard with a walk, which loads the bases for slugger Nick Gordon. Unfortunately though, he's in an 0-2 hole and strikes out swinging, so this game truly refuses to end, and now we're once again facing Hernandez's ridiculous fastball. We did walk off against it a few games ago, but honestly, that was entirely luck. So our best chance of hitting it is to stick our bat out and see what happens as we're going to the 14th inning. I did not expect this type of stalemate from these teams, but if we win, this would be a very exhausting way to go into the World Series against the Dodgers. Even 14 innings later, though, you can still see the fans going absolutely crazy in the stands like NPCs. And right now, with 1 out, this is looking like the best chance either side has had to win all of extra innings. Come on, get down. Ruiz walks it off. Holy moly, that was a long game, but we're finally advancing to the World Series. And I don't know what it is, but this team simply looks a lot more fit to win than last year. However, after the game, I just got hit with the craziest plot twist of all time, as it's not LA, but Milwaukee that's gonna be our opponent. Not only did they beat the Dodgers, but they came back from down 2-0 to win it. And while they're a very good team, I'm a little disappointed because I was looking for revenge. Regardless, I cannot complain because we are in the World Series for the second time. And as you just saw, our bullpen got out of a bases loaded jam and Mason Miller closed out game number 1. We keep finding ways to win and we're gonna need one more. Down 2 in the 9th inning, Shea Langlears. It does not stay fair. That would have been a go-ahead home run, but unfortunately, the yellow pole does not lie as we take the loss. Now game 3 is tied, but this is gonna pass Alex Kirilloff and score the go-ahead run, which ended up making all the difference in another close game. This has been a very close series so far, but it seems Oakland has the edge, as they now have a 3-1 series lead and are just 1 victory away from that elusive World Series win. And here's Von Grissom in a tie game, hitting a huge double. Once again though, we're facing Devin Williams, which unfortunately has become one of my least favorite tasks in MLB The Show, as all of his stuff constantly seems to break more than it needs to. I really can't say enough about how good our bullpen has been helping us out in these tough spots, as even though we're in extra innings, once again, they are still holding it down. So as a unit, they've been my playoff and World Series MVPs, as this is fouled off, and what a catch in the outfield. What a ridiculous play in right field, as neither side is giving an inch in this elimination game, but with 2 on and 1 away, the end could be nearing as Jacob Wilson grounds out, but he's able to beat out the double play. I was so close to eating my words, but it's not gonna matter after this ridiculously embarrassing Donovan chopper. But once again, our bullpen is looking to retire the side and does exactly that. We are going to inning 13. Oakland fans have been heavily affected by insomnia throughout the postseason because we can't close games. And if we don't win this one, I'm genuinely curious how our bullpen's gonna work tomorrow, as somehow we got out of that yet again. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to inning 16. I'm really hoping this game doesn't last much longer, and there it is. Milwaukee finally won it to make this a 3-2 series. That was so unnecessarily long, and of course Oakland's bats woke up in game 6 as they just scored 4 runs in the 6th inning. So Milwaukee's 16-inning win went to waste, as Oakland has become World Series champions just 1 season after after a humiliating loss to the Los Angeles Dodgers. We have finally reached the big stage in our Moneyball rebuild, but there's still 22 top 100 prospects in our organization, and I don't know about you, but I want to see this squad become a dynasty. My favorite part about doing these rebuilds is developing a farm system, and it's kind of hard to do that simply in a 5-year sim, so that is why for my own entertainment, and hopefully yours as well, I'm taking the extra time to sim like 5 seasons and see what this team can do. It is very fitting that the World Series MVP is none other than the first player we ever drafted, as Omar Valenzuela is up to 90 overall with plenty of service time remaining, and we're definitely going to need him to take that next step because this is an off season I have not been looking forward to for a long time. We are moving on from 5 of our most important offensive players, as Shea Langeliers was truly the first player from that original roster to break out, and while Ruiz took a little bit more time to get going, he established himself as one of the game's best leadoff hitters. Then there's Brendan Donovan, who's started to regress, but his addition 3 years ago helped us surge to our first playoff berth, and enough good things cannot be said about Ryan Noda, who I honestly was expecting to replace as soon as possible, but his continual success getting on base made me hold on to him, and I'm very glad that I did. Now, if you're a Moneyball fan like myself, then you might be wondering, Billy, how are we going to replace Jason Giambi and Johnny Damon? That is a very valid question, and my answer is that you cannot replace them, but you can try to recreate them. At least that's the answer I would give, but thankfully I've been thinking about this very scenario for several off seasons, and I think I have some pretty good replacements lined up at every position. Starting with Ruiz, his athleticism is easily his biggest asset, and last offseason we traded Josiah Gray to pick up Drew Jones, who had struggled at the major league level up to this point, but he still has great potential along with 5 years of control, and while his offense still needs some work, he's an even better fielder than Ruiz. Then there's Shea Langeliers, who's developed into a great catcher, and while it's going to be very difficult to recreate that output, I really trust MJ Melendez to carry the torch in his last year before free agency. But there's also former top prospect Tyler Soderstrom, who's the same overall as both of those guys, but because they were blocking him, he also has 5 years before free agency. I also haven't talked about Yohan Moncada yet, but he definitely deserves recognition for being pretty solid for the past 2 seasons. And as far as his replacement at third base goes, Tommy White is 82 overall, but he's still not made his major league debut, so he is the first guy in line to take over his roster spot. Then there's Zach Geloff, who played in the first couple years of the franchise, although I sent him down for poor performance, which at the time was pretty unfortunate, but he had lots of development time in AAA and also has 5 years of service remaining. Between the 3 Gs in Grissom, Gorman, and Geloff, along with Tommy White, we should have enough coverage for second and third base, but I think the one player whose replacement may not be on the roster is Brendan Donovan, just because of that positional versatility. He never just played one position for us, as we used him as a Swiss Army knife, and at least compared to our other outfielders, Donovan did give us some more flexibility against lefties, which we desperately need. Although if there's anyone that can fill that specific role, it is Denzel Clark, who also has not made his major league debut yet. Just like last season, it feels like we got better after losing several players who I thought were pretty important to our success, but even though we were a better team on paper, we still won 5 less games, which still was good enough for a first round bye in the playoffs. But I think the most interesting part about this season is, one, Mike Trout won an MVP at age 37, but also Ken Waldichuk, who has only been a long reliever for us, won the Cy Young. He sat in AAA forever and really struggled when given the chance to be a starter, so the fact that he was our most valuable pitcher this year is pretty crazy, especially since I felt this was a down year for the unit compared to last year. This was a very balanced offense in the sense that there wasn't really one guy who really stuck out, and instead the entire team kind of had their moments throughout the year, so we are a very scary team to even think about playing in the playoffs, as we just took down the Yankees in 4 games before taking down the Guardians in 5. Then of course, the World Series was nothing other than a rematch against the team that we beat last season, the Milwaukee Brewers, and just like last season, it is very clear we are the better team, and are just 1 win away from another World Series victory. It wasn't long ago that Milwaukee was actually winning this game by a run, but unfortunately, there was nothing they could do to stop history from repeating itself, as the Athletics have repeated. I think it's really funny that I never traded Mason Miller, despite saying I was gonna do it all video long, but I'm glad it worked out this way because we truly had a superstar closer on our side, which was definitely helpful in all the playoff runs. Also, Nolan Gorman and Alex Kirilloff were nice additions, but of course, according to the rules, I could only sign them for 2 years. And then after that, we're losing a couple really good relievers in Phil Bickford and Kyle Muller, who actually made an all-star game at one point, along with JJ Bleday, who may only be 79 overall, but he's played well above that rating and will be missed. This could be prime time for Diego Villafuerte, who we drafted a couple years ago to take over, and honestly, I'm not really too worried about second base because we still have Vaughn Grissom and Zach Geloff. We brought back MJ Melendez because he only cost us $8 million, and our Season 7 squad also features a new face in Brian Cho, who was a late round draft pick and is now making his debut as our ace. This was another successful season as we finished with 95 wins, and the most notable thing about this season is look just how much our offense carried us. This is ridiculous as we had so many guys above 900 OPS, and of course our pitching rotation was pretty good, but also not the best we've ever had. One of the biggest reasons our offense was as good as it was is because at the last minute last offseason, I decided to bring back Alex Kirilloff, and he absolutely went off in his age 32 season, despite only being signed to another 2-year deal. I would be shocked if this was not another World Series team, but we barely survived to Boston, although Kansas City was a much easier challenge, so I can't believe we're aiming for World Series number 3 as we have a 3-1 lead. We're trying to strike first, and our star Alex Kirilloff is going to do exactly that with a huge RBI double, and funny enough, that was the only run of the game from this high-powered offense as we just three-peated, and I honestly don't even care how we did it. Now we're in a very fun new era because MJ Melendez is our only free agent, so we're at the point where our farm is going to start hitting the majors in massive waves, and our team is going to keep improving every single season. It's the most satisfying thing. I guess we're going through some growing pains though because we didn't win the division, so we're taking on Los Angeles in the wild card and we beat them. So once again, we're in the ALDS, but this time we're getting swept by the Tigers. This year should be very different though, because this is our entire farm system pouring in all at one time, and it's unbelievable to see how unrecognizable this team is from even our first and second World Series run. Our team of rookies did rebound, winning 98 games in a competitive division, and notably after several years of Omar Valenzuela leading the way as our best player, we have a new star in 23-year-old shortstop Samuel Mota. After 8 seasons, we finally have an MVP candidate in Emmett Emerson, so the first round picks are really representing, especially in Rookie of the Year, as we had all 3 finalists. As you probably expected, looking at our roster and the awards, this offense was completely electric, and the coolest thing about it is that most of these guys were rookies, so I'm very excited to see what they do in the playoffs. We are shooting for our 4th World Series in 5 years, and the ALDS was easy enough, but now we're taking on Cleveland in the ALCS, and the series is tied at 2 apiece before Cleveland wins another game, but fortunately we won out and go to the World Series. Ronald Acuna is still kicking it at 34 years old, but he's also joined by Colton Cowser, and while that's a lot of star power, I don't think it's enough to beat this God Squad Ace team, as we are 1 win away from securing another pennant, but it's tied in the 9th. We've seen some very exciting walk-offs before, and right on cue, there's Reggie Griffin going yard, and no hesitation on the first pitch he saw, the 99 potential left fielder that we drafted in season number 4 comes up with the walk-off World Series win. That is the perfect way to send Omar Valenzuela into free agency, as he just wants too much money. But at least the good news is we have Nick Kurtz for the rest of the video, because I thought it was reasonable to offer him this extension. There are only 2 seasons of this simulation left, but I feel like this team is going to get even better than it is right now, as no one should be surprised, fasting forward a year, that we're on track for a World Series sweep. Now that I'm actually thinking about it, this might be season 10, but since I forgot and thought it was season 9, I am going to do one more after this, so at least that way I can show you guys the final roster, because it has definitely changed a lot, which happens when you have a lot of high potential players. I gotta say, I'm always amazed at how fast the CPU can destroy a roster, because even though it doesn't look like it from this screen, our farm system is not nearly what it used to be. For example, this entire screen used to be just A and B potential catchers, but regardless, this season's going to be very fun, because aside in our bullpen, we have 90s at basically every single position on offense. Because of how good we are, I think anything under a 100 win season would be a huge disappointment, so it's nice to see that we're 71-27 at the All-Star break. Our offense has been as advertised, with our 3rd ever first round pick, Emmett Emerson, hitting for 340 with a 1000 OPS, and checking out our starting 5, it looks like we have a pretty solid rotation. I think this season was proof that we got unlucky in some of the other sims, as we won 120 games, and on top of that, we had 3 MVP finalists along with 2 Cy Young finalists, so the hardware was definitely coming in for the Oakland A's. When I saw Emerson's stat line in the middle of the year, I really thought he had a chance for MVP, but I did not realize he was going to be trailed so closely by his own teammate Cecil Daniel, as we had 3 players hit over 40 home runs, and also 4 collecting over 100 RBIs. Craig Peters won the Cy Young, and it's very easy to see why, as he finished 19-3 on the season, with a 2.85 ERA rate and a 1.1 whip, and there is no doubt that is by far the highest WAR in our rotation. I'm gonna show the simulation of the playoffs, but honestly, as you know, it's probably not necessary because we're gonna win this thing. As whoop-de-doo, we're in another World Series. Let's close this out strong. It is very fitting. The final boss of this video is the last team I did a 10-year rebuild with, and that is the Colorado Rockies. And there's our MVP winner, Emmett Emerson, going yard for a grand slam. When I drafted him in season 3, I had no idea he'd hit for this type of power, and I'm very glad he did because he secured us our 6th World Series win of the video and puts a bow on one of the longest journeys in travel history as I took over the Oakland A's and rebuilt them Moneyball style to eventually turn them into a dynasty and win them so many championships. Thank you so much for watching this video. It took about a week to produce, so I'd really appreciate it if you drop the like and subscribe. And of course, if you want to watch more of my content, you know where to find it.